Hello everyone, Melanie here with CGL, and today's video is a little different from a lot of the other ones we have done in the past. It's focused specifically for those of you that are teachers or in the educational world and are looking or considering about transitioning out. We have gotten, I can't even tell you how many people have been reaching out to us recently trying to do this. And we wanted to be able to provide some resources specifically for you that are wanting to consider potentially pivoting into something new, that you can do it and give you actual steps and skills and ways to do it. Now, this video is actually going to be one of two, and I do recommend strongly you do watch both videos. This first one is going to be focusing first on the general pivot and ways and things to do. The second one is going to be focused on your resume and translating your experience from the teaching educational world into the corporate world. And we're going to do it with exact examples, show you here's what you have. Now let's translate this, and here's what you should have. And you are welcome to use any of the data that is in this video or that video to help you with your pivot. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet to our channel, please consider doing that now. We do have tons. There's like over 250 videos out here now that are all free and all resources to help you get a job faster. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Melanie Woods, and I'm an HR person with over 30 years of experience in HR with a passion for job seekers. Any of the information and data that you get in this video or any of our other videos is tested. It is data that we go out and we are ensuring that we're getting you the absolute best accurate data. So anything that we give you advice is going to help you with your job search. Okay, let's step in and take a look at doing this change from the educational and the teaching world. It's a great profession, but for some of you, it may be time that you want to move on to something else, and that's okay. So let's talk through things to think about on this journey. The first thing I want to tell you is you can do it. If people are telling you, oh, it is so hard, you'll never be able to get out of teaching. Once you've been in teaching for 20 years, you're there forever. Forget it. Don't listen to them. There's lots of people that have successfully pivoted out of teaching into great new careers that they love. Now, will it be challenging to do this pivot? Yes, it will be challenging. And I don't want to sugarcoat things and tell you you're going to have a job in 30 days. It may take longer depending on how far you want to pivot. And part of our video today is going to talk about which pivots are easier and you will land faster, and which ones may take a little bit more time that can align better with perhaps what you want to do. Now, throughout this whole process of trying to change careers or pivot, you are going to have to do a bunch of research and a bunch of learning. And we're going to go through a lot of different points today to try and help accelerate that for you. This is something you're used to doing anyway. Teachers are always working on refining and honing their skills. And so you're just going to have to refine and hone your skills in this process of getting a job. But you are going to find that this journey is going to be the most amazing way for you to actually learn more about yourself. You're going to get to understand more of your strengths and your weaknesses. What are your hard skills? What are your soft skills and competencies? And we're going to go through some of those as well on this video to try and help you get further along with that journey. So remember, the goal here of what we're trying to do is to change into a new career. And this does require some pre-work to figure out what that career change is going to be. The goal is not to switch jobs multiple times, testing and trying out the water. Tenure matters. And what do I mean by tenure? That means the amount of time that you stay with a company or stay in a job. One of the things that will trip you up as a job seeker is if you do your career exploration by jumping from job to job to job. Well, I think I'll try this for 3 months. Well, no, I didn't really like that. Let me try this for 3 months and this for 3 months. You're then going to be seen as a job hopper who people aren't going to want to hire you because they're going to say, oh, they're just going to leave again in 3 months and try something new. Or they're going to think that you don't have the skills to pivot or change out of teaching. And that's the last impression you want to give. So you really want to have a strong understanding of where you're trying to position your career to, or where you're trying to pivot to before you accept a job. Now, don't get me wrong, the interview process and the time that you spend researching companies and doing interviews with companies is part of that process. You may interview with a company for a job that you think, wow, this one sounds wonderful. But then when you really get in and start learning about from the people you're interviewing with, the different facets of it and what the requirements are, you may think to yourself, this is not what I want to do. And that's okay. What we're talking about is we don't want to accept a job, start it, and then quit that job, move on, and quit that job and move on. That's the type of job hopping, and that destroys your tenure, and it does not help your career in the short term or in the long term. The other thing that I want you to think about as we're doing this is I don't want you to think, because you are a teacher that's been in an educational setting, that the only pivot that you can make is into something that is educational or is somehow still focused to teaching. There are tons of pivots that you can do outside of that. And so I did go out into LinkedIn Recruiter and did some searching on this. And I pulled up, a bunch of people who were teachers in their past who have pivoted into new things to see what are some of the different job titles that they've pivoted to and some of their paths. And it was an incredible amount of pivots. And here are some of the ones that we saw come up. And let me make this a little bigger for you to actually see. Some of the pivots that they have done is business analyst, chemist, human resources, sales, customer service, data analytics. That one at the bottom there is training and development manager, content writer, operations learning manager, credentialing manager, career services director, accountant, marketing, web designer. Now, I'm sharing all this with you to say there may be more options than you're considering. Just because somebody else switched from this to this doesn't mean that has to be the path for you. It might be, but it might not as well. Now, as we're talking about what do I do with this career change and how do I pivot and how do I get out? Anytime somebody comes to me saying, help, Melanie, I'm trying to make a career change. How do I do this? I always point them back to Stephen Covey. And Covey had said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And it is brilliant advice for the job search, because you need to understand everything in the job search world and yourself before you move forward trying to make this pivot. So specifically, you need to understand the corporate world. For some teachers, they went to schooling, went all the way, got their degree, and then jumped right into their first teacher job. And they've never held a job outside in the corporate world, or it has been a good 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years since they have been out in the corporate world. And the roles have changed, and there's all of these new opportunities available that you may not even know about. So you need to understand the corporate world and some of those positions to get a really good look at what is out there and what's available for you. You also really need to know how hiring works. The people that I see the most that get frustrated by this transition from teacher into the corporate America world is they're doing it wrong. There was somebody just this last week who I saw had sent out hundreds and hundreds of resumes and felt very, accomplished, but hadn't gotten any interviews. And the reality is doing activities like that can actually work against you. It can actually cause you to get flagged in a system as they're not going to look at your resume anymore. So it is really critical that you do understand the systems that are and the processes that HR and companies use for recruiting. And then you absolutely positively need to know yourself. And when I say know yourself, you've got to know your hard skills and you've got to know your soft skills. And you have to understand how those skills work together in order for companies to find you. And we will talk some more about that in a minute. So let's first focus on knowing yourself. Now, when you talk about hard skills, these most times are what you're going to see in job descriptions as requirements. I'm looking for somebody that has experience with, for example, the first one on here is curriculum development. I'm looking for somebody with a specific software skill. Like I'm looking for somebody that can do pivot tables in Excel. Those are very much more hard skills. On the other side, we have soft skills, things like communication and planning and conflict resolution. Now, when you look at yourself as a teacher or educational, it sometimes can be really hard to kind of pull out hard skills that you think are going to be marketable because you don't realize how many things that you've done that are so similar to certain positions on the outside world. The outside world. That's a funny phrase for this. When we get to the second video, when we talk about translating your experience on the resume, that is going to show you exactly you're terming this as this. Let me show you how we can term it different to help your resume and help you land the job. But for now, you do need to try and come up with a list of hard skills. And it's things that are more specific content knowledge or things that are like a software or hardware or something that's a methodology that you may know. If you are a science teacher and you're working, in with lab tools and different things, teaching advanced chemistry classes, that is a hard skill that would be utilized for a pivot into something like a chemist. Likewise, if you are teaching English and you're utilizing PowerPoint a lot and Word, that's a hard skill that you can translate out. If you're teaching a math and part of it, one of your classes is like a business math or something like that, those are hard skills. But your soft skills are just going to be as important, but the difference is any type of system, like an applicant tracking system that is looking at your data, generally goes more towards the hard skills. They are hard skill focused. They're not soft skill focused. Now, if you're not comfortable or understand about what applicant tracking systems are, no worries. We've got you covered. Like I said, there's over 250 videos on this channel, and you can go out and watch all of the different ones. There are 2 or 3 that are how recruiting and how hiring works. They are a great baseline, which will walk you through and take you through so you understand all of these different systems and things. We try to keep them as short as we can so that they're quick hits for you, but there's lots of great data out there on those. Okay, so another thing when we're talking about seek first to understand is understanding the corporate world. And let me make this a little bigger so you can see it better. So you're coming from an educational environment and you may have exposure and maybe in a position or situation where you have more of an understanding of the outside corporate environment. But in general, a lot of people don't. And so when you look at like the educational environment, your position is controlled more through government funding in most cases. When you go to the corporate environment, your funding is different. Now, whether you're working for a public company, one that's publicly traded on like a stock exchange, a privately owned company, whether that's private equity, an individual, a family, or if it's federal or a nonprofit, all of those handle things a little bit different, and the funding comes in different for the positions. So it's important to understand, depending on what you're targeting, how they work different. And know that if you work for a public company and it's COVID times and a lot of things are going down and they don't have the revenue coming in, you are in danger of losing your job. There were, oh my gosh, millions of people that got laid off. Teachers as a whole were pretty isolated from that in comparison when you look at the percentages of the corporate population. So you still got a salary, you still got paid, unless you were doing something part-time or an hourly, but for most of them they still got paid, right? And that's just a different trade-off to those type of organizations and understanding that educational versus corporate difference. Some of these other differences to consider is if you're in the educational environment, your focus of the organization is outside generally of your control. Like as a teacher, I'm in Texas, and in Texas they have the TEKS, which they have to teach what they're told to teach, and the methodologies they use may change, but they don't have as much control. Whereas when you're in a corporate environment, you have way more control over that. You may be part of the one setting the strategic direction of the organization. You also see in the educational environment, there's less variety in the roles. Whereas in the corporate environment, let's be honest, they can decide to add a role for anything. I mean, they can decide, hey, we've never had this before. I've never heard of this, in the business world, but we think there's a need for somebody that does just this. And they create a role around it. That's a much harder process in the educational environment than it is in the corporate environment. But the good news for you is that gives you great other opportunities, right, in the corporate world. Okay, so some other things to think about. You may, in the educational world, you may have been on a contract, and you may be in part of a union, a teachers union that's union-based. In the corporate world, there is very few contracts until you get to the very senior levels. And most employees are on an at-will basis. Now, you also have the issue of a lot less unions. There are still unions that are more trade unions, but most employees in the US are not covered underneath a union. So it is a difference in how your employment is managed, and how you specifically, what support you have. You don't have a union behind you. The other thing I'd like to cover, and I'm going to pull myself out for a second so you can see this a little better, is in the educational environment, the salaries are based on funding, tenure, and are very controlled. In the corporate environment, the salaries are based on the company position to the market and on the individual's performance. So the company may choose to be a leading in their comp ratios and their salaries, or they may choose to be lagging. You also have the ability to say, performance-wise, this person did an amazing job, and for a private company, they can give you whatever kind of raise they want to give you. So there's a lot of advantages in that way in moving into that corporate environment. But when it gets to the point where you're trying to accept a position, you need to know these things so you don't get lowballed on the salary, right? You want to be competitive to the market. Just because you came from a teacher's salary does not mean that they should lowball you and offer you less than they would offer somebody else that's in the market that may have started from a higher salary base if your skills and experience are greater. So understanding these things is going to help you through this journey of trying to make this change. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is how hiring works. Now, again, we have loads of videos to help you on how hiring works. Excuse me. But here are some things that I definitely want to make sure I cover with you on this video. The first thing is the process has changed significantly in recent years. And I mean significantly. The internet totally changed hiring, but even with everything that's gone on with COVID and the global pandemic, it has definitely changed hiring again. And even for those of us that are in this every single day, we are constantly having to do research and learn new things and figure out things and help develop new things as this process is evolving and changing. If you do it wrong, you could just be wasting your time. So it is important to try and understand as much as you can about it. Now, if you don't know how it works, you can do activities that'll negatively rebound on your job search. And that's why, again, this is so important. Now, the unfortunate news is there are lots of people giving advice out there on your career, on your job change, on all these kind of things, but they're not all doing it from a position of understanding. I've never seen so many people pop into the title of career coach in my life. Here's my advice to you. Are there ones that are excellent at it? Absolutely. You need to take advice from somebody or somebodies who is factually based, who is actively working in the different hiring and recruiting and company systems, because you really and truly have two hurdles that you need to do in order to land your next job. The first is to get through all of these electronic systems. Anybody who tells you, oh, you just bypass those, don't worry about them, does not understand how they work and does not understand how companies work. You do need to be able to get through these systems, but the system is never going to hire you. A person is going to hire you. So you need to also understand things like behavioral based interview questions and what they're looking now on, certain questions they ask. You need to understand and be able to function in both worlds, the system world and the people who are actually going to hire you for the job. So if you're dealing with somebody who's trying to give you career advice, first go out and look at that person on LinkedIn. If they've jumped 10 jobs in the last 3 years, probably not your best person to listen to. If they are not actively working in some of these systems, probably not your best person to listen to. Lots of people are doing clickbait and flash, does not mean that the data is good. The same way, if you're buying a car, you're going to be looking at all the different pieces. Even though their advice is free, look at it with the same skepticism. Ask questions. If they can't answer for you why they're saying one way or another, boom, that's an issue, that's a problem. We need to be more in our educational than just clickbait. Okay, let's talk further. Let me get this back big again. I do want to stress to you that the time that you spend understanding the process is one of the most impactful things you can do for your job search. And I know you're like, oh, I don't want to understand the process so much. I want somebody else to do it for me. I promise you, every minute you spend in understanding that job process and the companies and the role that you're looking for is going to make you happier in the end, because you're going to land into a job that you love in a career that you love, and you're going to do it in a much, much shorter time. Okay, let's keep going on. So let's talk about what is the best way for you transitioning out to find a new job. And this definite, no matter what role, no matter what you're pivoting to, no matter what you're looking in any type of industry, the best way to find a job is always through someone you know. This is the reason why companies offer such big employee referrals, because they know when a current employee refers somebody in, they're not only referring in their skills and experience, they're also referring in their cultural match. Do they have the competencies, the soft competencies, which can be harder to gauge sometimes, that matches with what this position requires and needs? They're putting their reputation on the line for you. That's why employee referral amounts are just crazy that they give to employees sometimes. I saw one in a hospital setting just 2 days ago that was offering $10,000, $15,000 referral bonuses. So it does make a difference to go through somebody you know. Now, here's the unfortunate news. You have to build a network in order to do that. And for you, if your entire network has been based in the educational setting, you got to almost start over sometimes with a whole new direction in your network. And don't get me wrong, don't disconnect from those people, but you need to actively try to network with people in the jobs and functions and area that you want to be in. So if you have decided through this process that your heart is set on that you want to move into the automotive industry, you got to start networking and making connections within that industry. If you have decided you want to move into a position of a chemist, you have to start interfacing with other chemists, with other people in that area, in that arena. So you have to do the work to build your network in the direction that you're wanting to go. Okay, let's keep going with this by focusing on the next, which is another way to find a new job is following the path of somebody else. There are lots and lots of individuals who have successfully made this switch from teacher into something else. If you're a math teacher, go out on LinkedIn and look for some other people that were math teachers that have moved on to something else. Engage with them. Talk with them. Say, how did you do this? What was your entry? What did you find you like about this new job? What did you not like? I am one of those individuals that truly believes that most people, if you ask, are going to do their best to try and help you. Most people are good and kind. And if you see somebody that's already gone down a path, then try seeing if you can't talk with them to see if maybe their path aligns with what you want to do. Now, the closer you look, the closer the adjacency to your current role, the faster generally you will land. Well, what do I mean by adjacency? And specifically, we're talking about you really want to do like a one-step adjacency. So you can do this adjacency or this connection based on two things mainly. And the first one is one that's more an educational adjacency. So these are going to be positions that are very similar to what you do in your educational teacher job, but are in corporate America. Things like a curriculum developer. That's an easy adjacency leap, right? So the adjacency is it may be in a different industry or a different setting, but the activities that you're doing are pretty much the same, right? A role like a corporate trainer would be a one-step adjacency, an educational consultant, or positions working for like an educational vendor. Let's say, for example, in your classroom, you get supplies from this educational vendor. Well, that's still a one-step adjacency for you to go to that vendor and say, hey, I've used your product for years and years and years. I love it. I would love to be a sales rep for you or work in your development. It's still that adjacency. Now, that's all our educational. The other type of adjacency that you have as a teacher is usually, unless you're doing, elementary, where you're doing a truly broad spectrum of teaching, in your teaching, you have some type of specific skill focused. Are you a math teacher? Are you a chemistry teacher? Are you doing business? What is it? And there's positions that may be a one-step adjacency from that job you're doing today into corporate America. And so examples of those, again, if you're teaching chemistry, maybe that one-step adjacency is a lab technician or a lab manager. If you're teaching math and you had a degree in business or accounting before you went to teaching, maybe your one-step adjacency is like accounting. If you are working and you're teaching classes that are very focused on web building or something like that, it may be an IT or software support specialist. In general, when we talk about specific skill-focused adjacencies, we're talking about positions working for a company focused around one of your non-educational skills. Now, I realize that not all of us are going to be able to find a job that's a one-step adjacency, or as you explore, you may decide you don't want to. You may want to do something totally different. That's okay. And I'm going to tell you, you can still do it. Just your gap to entry in that job might be a little bigger, which might require you to go back and do some additional schooling or take some other training or a certification. So more than a one-step adjacency, can you do it? You absolutely can. It's just you're going to most likely land faster if you have that one-step adjacency from where you are today. Okay, now if you're wanting to do this one-step adjacency into, which a lot of teachers are doing, that training and development world, there are certain things like a curriculum development, a curriculum developer, a training manager, a corporate trainer, things like that. There are some sites that you can go to help you with this. And so specifically, the biggest one is going to be td.org, and that's the Association for Talent Development. You are going to see lots of positions like curriculum development, content writers, training managers, those type of positions that are going to be out there on td.org. They have a job bank that's out there, and it's free. You don't have to be a member of TD in order to join or to look at, the job bank. However, if you do choose to become a member, you can start going to events, and that's a great way to grow your network. Now, another big one is the Society for Human Resource Management. And the Society for Human Resource Management is more human resources jobs in general, but there's usually training and development falls underneath human resources, unless it's like training and development specific for like EHS or something. Most times it falls underneath the Department of Human Resources, which is why there's so many jobs that are out there underneath shrm.org. They have a job bank too. Now, go a step further. Both of these organizations have these. I gave you the web addresses for the larger national parts of the organization. Both of them have chapters, and the chapters independently have their own job posting systems most times. So especially like the SHRM one, there are so many chapters, and a lot of times the positions that are posted out on the chapter websites are not posted on other like big job boards like Google or Indeed or Monster. Excuse me. And the reason for that is because they're hard coded in. They're not fed through an applicant tracking system or something else. So a lot of times they only appear in that one place. If you are really motivated, which I hope you are for this new exciting career change, go to SHRM and go to td.org and look at the chapters. And when you get to the chapter that's closest to you, or other ones if you're willing to move or work remote, excuse me, you'll be able to see tons of jobs. Now, there are a lot of other job sites, and we do have lots of videos on these. I'm highlighting these 3 for you. That we have one out there that's a top sites, for human resources job. We have the top 10 sites to find a job, the 10 sites to search for nonprofit jobs if you're wanting to go that way. All of those videos are out there for you. Go under the playlist, job posting sites, and that will help you find lots of other job posting sites to look at. I am not in favor of job posting sites that charge you as a job seeker to see them. So don't go off joining ones thinking you have to pay to see jobs. You're a job seeker. You do not have to do that. You should not have to do that. Companies are not posting on those sites. Those sites are pulling most times from other places. Please don't pay to see job postings. Okay, let's keep going. So next, I do want to really highly recommend to you that you use a push and a pull system in your job search. And let's talk about what I mean by that. When you have a push and a pull system, the push part of it is you want to push your resume out against jobs that you're actually applying for. But you can't see all the jobs and you don't know everything that's out there. So you also need a pull system where people can find you and find all the great skills that you can bring to their company. The best pull system by far is LinkedIn. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you absolutely need a LinkedIn profile. We have tons of videos on LinkedIn profiles and how to make it the best that you possibly can. Any other system that you load into, like if you go to a company site like Exxon and they say, load in your resume, you're loading it into a pull system. It's going to go into their applicant tracking system and they're going to search based on that system for a variety of different openings they have and try to pull you. So anytime you're not applying for a direct role, it's going to be a pull system. If you upload your resume in Indeed, that becomes then a pull system where the search filter of Indeed does the same type thing. Okay, let's keep going to our next one, which is talking about your resume. Now, please watch the second video in this series. The second video, I took a lot of time to translate things that I saw on teachers' job profiles, on their LinkedIn profiles, on their resumes, and I'm going to translate it for you into what you should be saying on your corporate resume. You need to translate or you're going to get missed. You're going to get missed by the systems and you're going to get missed by people reading it and saying, they look like they're just a teacher. You are so much more. You just have to have a way to be able to show that. And your resume is definitely where you start with that. And when we talk about your resume, you want to make sure that when you're translating all of this stuff and doing it, that you are paying attention to the job that you're trying to get. Now, we do have a video that is out there that is the best resume format for 2022. That's the actual template for the resume. The second video that I'm talking about is more focused on taking your teacher experience and translating it into the bullets of that resume. So both are definitely useful. Before you do your LinkedIn profile, do your resume first. Again, before you do your LinkedIn profile, get your resume done right first. Because what you're going to do is take that data from your resume to build your LinkedIn profile. So definitely resume first, then you're going to be able to build out an amazing LinkedIn profile. Okay, so remember, as you're going down this process, the job search process is challenging. It is so challenging. It is It is the hardest thing some people do. Why? Because we identify with our jobs. Most of us got into our first job because it's something that we love to do. And sometimes there's feelings of grief leaving it. You second guess yourself. Oh, what if nobody likes me for anything else? And throughout this entire process of finding a job, we can sugarcoat it any way we want, but you're going to be judged. And it's hard to not, oh, I thought I was great for that. Why didn't I get that role? Oh, they gave me that feedback. I didn't think I said that, or nobody even answered me. So it's hard because you feel like you're constantly judging, and then you start judging yourself, and you can't win when you do that. You also only have control over certain portions of this process, right? The best thing is you get control in the end to say yes or no, accepting the role. But it's hard because so much of it is going to feel like it's out of your control. You can't let this undermine you, this job process. You have to truly and within your soul know that, we are all worthy of a great job, a great career, and a great life. We all have that role that's out there for us, and it's okay to try and do something new. Don't let this process undermine you and who you are and what you want to do with your career. All right. I hope this initial data was helpful for you. Please use the comment section down below. If you have questions, my team and I do go through those comments daily. We try to answer as many as we possibly can, even if it's something very specific, to try and give you further information. If you also want a video that's focused somehow different on something, let us know, and we do our best to provide these free resources to help everyone with their job search. Promise me, watch the second video. I promise you it will help you with your resume. All right, everyone. I hope again this data was helpful for you. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.